Hi again, you all. So I just wanted to jump in real quick and tell you a little bit about the theme of this course. Primarily in this course, we're going to be looking at Middle Eastern literature, as well as Arab American literature. In fact, we'll start with Arab American literature and look at the times when it started, and then we'll trace the reasons that led Arab Americans to immigrate to the U.S. in the first place, which was primarily colonization and war in what used to be the Ottoman Empire and is now known as the Middle East. Of course, we'll first module is going to be just primarily getting you to think about some of the stereotypes that you already have about Arabs, and to also look at Hollywood and how Hollywood has played a role in shaping American culture and mainstream culture views of Arabs, and what they are, what their characteristics and qualities are. Okay. And as the course progresses, we'll look at different regions in the Middle East. I primarily ground you in the history. This is really a big part of my approach to teaching literature, is that you can't understand literature without looking through the history. And actually, you'll see that literature helps us get a more of a personal view, and even a more accurate view of history. So the two really go well together. And I know not everybody, not all of you, every one of you has a background about the Middle East, and so I try to focus it and ground you in that history so that the readings you're doing actually make sense. And you'll notice that really each region that you go through, each part of the Middle East, we're barely not going to cover all of them, but they have different histories. It's not all, you can't lump the entire Middle East into one just like kind of one lump or one category, like, yeah, they're Arabs or this is the Middle East. Just like we can't say all of, it's just like you can't lump all Asians as like being, Chinese or Japanese. You can't say they're Asian, but yes, but what part of Asia, right? So it's kind of something similar along those lines when we're looking at Arabs and when we're looking at the Middle East. And you'll notice that in terms of the history, there is really a collective trauma that I actually think is carried individually, like on almost this intergenerational trauma. But each region has its own unique traumas, its own unique history, and its own unique changes and reactions to what happened with colonization and how they reacted or responded to colonization. So when you come out of this course, you will realize that, wow, I didn't realize that there was so much history and so much variation in the culture, and even in terms of the writers and how they express that trauma and that culture and the history of war. It's a lot of history of war that you will see that began to become more and more evident post-colonization, which really created a lot of turmoil in the region. When we're talking about colonization, we're talking about British France, and then the U.S. as well. So also, what I wanted to say was that in this course, I will be including some movies, or quite a bit of movies. I'll have some short clips. Some will be optional, some will be required. But I also really try to pick out, there's so many movies made by Arab producers and Arab American producers that I incorporate in this course because it's so helpful. And with a lot of the students' reviews and feedback that I get, they always say the movies have been the most helpful because it just kind of gives like this visual understanding of the readings, although then not all the texts are based on the readings, but it also gives students kind of a more perspective, the Arab or Middle Eastern perspective. And I am careful here with my words. I say Arab or Middle Eastern because as I'll talk about in the syllabus, not all Middle Easterns are Arabs. In fact, there's a lot of people who are Middle Eastern but are not Arabs. For example, people from Iran, they're not Arab, they're Persian, and their language is also not Arabic, it's Farsi. So, and also, not all Arabs are Muslims, and not all Middle Eastern are Muslims either. So that's one of the things that, and a lot of people think, that Persians are Arabs, and they're not, right? And speaking of language, the Middle East, there's such a variety of languages, but not everybody speaks the same dialect. So there's the classical Arabic, that's the key main or mother dialect, because it's the language of the Quran. And not that all Middle Easterns are Muslims. There are Christians and Jews, and there are Armenians in that part of the world. But in terms of language, each culture, each region has a particular dialect. So for example, I'm from Damascus. I grew up in Damascus, Syria, and the dialect we speak there is different from the dialect that is spoken in Lebanon, but we understand each other because it's so close. And Lebanon is 1 hour away. Like literally you get in the car and it's 1 hour away from there, but their dialect is different. Now, I've never been to Saudi Arabia, but if I were to go to Saudi Arabia, I would have a really, really hard time speaking with them in their dialect because they speak a different dialect. If I go to Algeria, I have no idea what they're saying. No idea. And if Morocco, for example, there are parts of Morocco where they speak Berberi because it's in the mountain and rural area. I don't know Berberi, and not a lot of people from Arabs or Middle Easterns know that language. So it's such a nuance. We're barely going to be able to scratch the surface, but I think that you will come out feeling enriched and informed. And a lot of students tell me that they started off not knowing anything or really not caring, and they come out feeling like they're much more informed, and they can pick up a newspaper or try to read the news and say, I think I understand what's going on. You can research it better. All right, so without much more talk, what I'm going to do is you can go ahead and get started on the next section we have.